Okay, it is 1:01. I would like to welcome everybody to the October 23rd meeting of CCWD. Would you all please rise and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Quite a crowd today.
Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Yes. Here. Yes.
Yes.
I am here. Okay, at this time, this is public comment. Members of the public may address the board on any agenda or any item that is not agendized. The public is encouraged to work through staff to place items on the agenda for board consideration. No action can be taken on matters not listed on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. We have a number of people in the audience today. Does anybody want to make a public comment? Okay. Moving on. We have a consent agenda.
I'll move for acceptance.
Second.
Before, I want to just see what questions I had on A.
Move for acceptance of 3B and 3C.
Yeah, I'd like to pull A, so we have a motion for B and C.
I'll second that.
Okay, with a motion and a second, Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes, please. Okay, now on A, this is just a picayunish type of thing, but I'm really glad that we finally have this Lehman Brothers amount that has been identified as being in default instead of, just kind of lumped in with everything else. But I do see that we earned $32.13 interest on that. That's quite remarkable, and I wonder if Rebecca C. could go to work on seeing if we could get a higher interest rate on some of the other accounts. So, yes, Peter.
Oh, did you have any? I didn't know if you wanted an explanation for.
No. I'm just.
Okay.
I'm using my presidential prerogative to be silly.
Understood. So. No.
You
No need to respond.
used to be like that before you became.
Could I ask? Okay, may I ask a question? Okay,
Yes.
Then which meeting are we going to be having the complete story? Where we all have the details and everything?
Are you talking about the quarterly? That'll be on the 13th.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be presenting that one.
Oh, all right, that's fine. Thank you.
And welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Good to see you here.
Thank you.
But Peter, if you wouldn't mind come back, I think that this is appropriate time for me to make some comments about your recent performance. Yeah. And don't be concerned, because everything that I'm going to say is.
Are you still being silly?
No, I'm being very, very truthful and appreciative, and I just want to acknowledge the quite remarkable performance that you've done in the absence of Jeff Meyer. It's very commendable. I'm sure others may want to echo my comments, but it's been delightful to see how you've risen to the occasion and kind of spread your wings a little bit. And
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I'm definitely happy to pass the torch at this point.
But what are you going to do with your spare time now?
So much to do. Michael and I talked about it. I've had to kind of put some stuff on the back burner, and I'm excited to get back to it. So we've got groundwater stuff that's kind of finally coming to the next phase, and then some water resources and water sales stuff that we need to really focus back on again. So.
Okay.
When I agree with President Thomas that you could have taken this and not done much with it, and I don't think much was expected during this interim. We knew we were interviewing and looking at some good candidates, but you did step up and did a great job and put a lot of effort into it. Kudos.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I agree with everything they said.
And
Good
you
job.
answered your phone. That was
I know your number when it comes up, so.
And you still answered it, huh?
Okay, I would entertain a motion on A, please. 3A.
Second.
Or I'll make the motion on A. So we have a motion and a second. And would you please poll for that?
Yes.
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 That's fine.
Okay, now, also using the presidential prerogative here, I'm going to move the agenda around a little bit. We have an item for, we're already there. Shoot, I was going to move it ahead. So, geez.
You're going to move it to the
How
back?
silly. We went to the back and then we went to the front. Okay, this is, we have to discuss a resolution for appreciation for Christopher Zanardi, also known as Chris, for his 30 years of service with CCWD. And it's really quite remarkable. Chris apparently is our longest standing employee. Are we going to be able to be open with him gone? I'm not sure, but it might be. But
That's remarkable.
he went to work for the district on September 18th, 1989.
He was 7.
7 years old. Yeah. But it's really quite a distinguished career. I have recently become aware of Chris's skills, and you're going to be really missed here. So, anybody?
We have an agenda item here.
I know.
So you might want to get David, who's going to read the?
I'm going to read it, but only after we approve the granting of this here resolution. So don't we have to approve a resolution?
I'm make a motion that we accept a resolution of appreciation for Chris Zanardi, their 30 years service with CCWD.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. Would you please poll the board on that?
Yes.
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 Yes, I vote in the affirmative. Okay, Chris, could you please come forward? I have some comments that we have to make to you here. Okay, this is
Front and center.
front. Resolution number 2019-72. A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Calaveras County Water District commending Christopher Zanardi for 30 years of service. Whereas Chris Zanardi has faithfully served the board and ratepayers of the Calaveras County Water District for 30 illustrious years. We might want to find out how illustrious it's been. But, and whereas Chris has continually worked to achieve district objectives by effectively completing a myriad of technologically difficult projects. Examples include White Pines Debris Removal Project, 2006 stormwater removal in Copperopolis in 1999 and 18, locating and testing of the slurry line and multiple replacements and improvements to copper raw water treatment plants, Lake Tulloch raw water pump station, and whereas Chris continually provides an unwavering professional work ethic to the district at all tasks, and whereas Chris actively and tirelessly provided potable water to the residents of Sheep Ranch and firefighters during the Butte Fire, and whereas Chris accepted the 2019 reorganization of the district's field crews openly and proactively, took the reorganization as an opportunity to complete additional construction projects such as the Copper Cove wastewater treatment plant road rehabilitation, and whereas Chris has an unparalleled level of field experience and is always open and willing to teach less experienced staff to the betterment of the district, and Whereas Chris continues to adeptly deploy members of the construction crew to provide support to field crews throughout the district, and whereas Chris manages to coat every morsel of his lunch with a generous slathering of ketchup to the amazement of colleagues. Now, therefore, it be resolved, the Board of Directors of Calaveras County Water District, that Christopher Zanardi, senior construction worker, is hereby commended for his 30 years of dedicated service with the district. Okay, and this, of course, was passed on this 23rd day of October 2019 by a unanimous vote of the board. So congratulations.
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 Joel, would you like to take some pictures of this presentation?
Can I make one couple of quick comments? Just to add a couple of points. You know, we can't say enough about how much we appreciate the work that you do and the way you took on the reorganization and made it work. You know, we owe a lot to you for that, and so we're all very grateful for the hard work that you do. So grateful, in fact, that we went in and got a gift for you. And Chris is not leaving anytime soon. I look forward to a 40-year resolution. For 30 years of hard work.
I appreciate it. That's only last week. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We also
Yeah.
give them a chance to.
Yeah, Chris, do you want to say anything in your defense?
Well, in my defense, I'll say one thing, that I really appreciate the management we have now. It's been really great for the short time that they've been here, so that's one thing. That's been a great place to work my whole career, so anyway, but this isn't gonna last very long.
Hey, just put in another 30 years, you get another one.
Hey, looks like he
So
could.
anyway, thank you guys.
Okay, wonderful. So how do you want to do this, Joel?
Why don't you just all come down in front with the resolution and we'll
And the gift.
start right this time. Bertha, you want to maybe come over on this side? What do you get about? Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Got it.
But you're not retired.
I just want to say also for the record, you guys, while everybody's sitting down, that it's been an absolute pleasure to get to work with you again. I worked with Chris briefly in '05 as an operator, and you know, Chris is just a champion of the district, and everything that he has in mind when we're out working is with the district's best interest in mind, and I really appreciate that. And he's attentive and creative, and he achieves a lot of great work. So thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
Put it on the refrigerator at home.
Okay, let's move on to item 4B. This is a discussion and direction regarding a USDA Rural Utility Service Grant Loan Award and letter of conditions for proposed district-wide automatic metering project. This is a capital improvement project designated number 11096. And wow, we have music.
Sorry, I was kind of daydreaming there. Thinking about ketchup. I'm sorry for the length of this memo. I think we just really wanted to try to get as much detail into the discussion. At an earlier meeting we had, there was a request for us to come back with more info on specifics of the financials and also project benefits. And so this memo kind of just highlights a lot of those things, tried to be as objective as possible. And just so that the purpose of this memo today is strictly just trying to respond to that request from the board for more information. So in this brief presentation today, I just intend to try to highlight some of the financial considerations associated with the offer that has been presented to us from the United States, or USDA Rural Development Program, and also just kind of highlight some of the project benefits at a lower kind of close-up level instead of the 30,000 foot level. Since the last time we spoke, the district received a letter of conditions from USDA that kind of highlights the terms and the offer in the grant loan agreement. I should mention that a lot of this work was done by Jeff Meyer and Charles Palmer over several months after this project being incorporated into the CIP and receiving direction from the board to go forward with the application. So that letter of conditions affirms that the total amount of money has been obligated to the district for the project. It's also a $1 million grant that has been considered as part of the project, as well as a $5 million loan component. That's the terms of that loan are a 40-year loan with the 2.75 max interest, and there is no penalty for early payoff. The reason why I said maximum interest is that we had a discussion with USDA recently, and since the letter of conditions was issued, the interest terms have dropped several points. Right now, they're offering 2.375, I believe. So, and also the conditions are that the district must find interim financing during the construction timeframe. So, also we did confirm that alternatively, the district could provide itself with a loan during the timeframe of construction.
Out of what account?
It would have to probably come from a fund that would have to be identified. So that was not considered when this was discussed with USDA before. You could take it out of R&R and then backfill that once the construction is done. So that is an option as well. So, but that would require some additional back and forth with USDA. They required that we go back and identify what was.
So something similar to what we did with this building?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Taking out the capacity fees?
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of just the real summary, high-level summary of the terms of that letter of conditions from USDA. Obviously, I didn't mention it, but if the project needs to be done in 5 years, it's going to, so they're requiring a pretty accelerated time frame. The proposed project is kind of on that 2 to 3 year time frame as well. So just to highlight some of the project benefits, obviously safety is a big one. Anytime you have meter readers out on the side of the road, crossing uneven terrain, snow, different inclement weather, there are risks associated with that, and also just having to potentially encroach on people's property. In many cases, we've kind of slowly started to find and identify those properties that, I think we talked about this just in the last couple months, that were had meters that were troublesome, had to cross the gates, or there might be dogs that were aggressive or other issues, and we slowly kind of swapped a lot of those meters out with automatic meter readers. So those are actually attached to the handheld devices that the meter readers have right now. So we identified about 30 or 40 of those and did do some work on that. So, and then just identifying productivity and efficiency gains. That was one of the things that was asked at the last meeting. As you can see, kind of out of 1 month, there's 2 cycles within our meter reading schedule. So you have, they kind of tend to go the upper areas and then the lower levels. So on that first cycle and the second cycle, they typically take about 3 weeks. So the meter readers are out there full time for 3 weeks out of the month, just focused on reading meters. So the estimate is that it could actually reduce that by about 2/3. Essentially, you could reduce that time frame to about a week, and perhaps even more as time goes on, as things get more and more firm. So what you're essentially able to do is free up those 2 employees that are dedicated to meter reading about half time. So that would be equivalent to about 1 full-time employee that could be freed up to work on other projects. We're obviously obligated by the state on our distribution systems to go and turn valves, do a lot of flushing, other regulatory requirements that are probably not being done as well as they could be. And then additionally, auditing meters, swapping in and out meters, we're falling behind pretty regularly on that as well. So, sorry.
The 3 weeks, is it 3 weeks? I know there's two different cycles, one for upcountry, one for downcountry. And so I know you're doing, is this the same meter readers doing it those 3 weeks for the first month and the same meter readers doing it the next month for the other areas for 3 weeks? And,
Yeah.
okay, so that's 6 weeks of meter reading. That would would it go down to 1 or would it go down to 2?
So it'd be 2. I mean,
Okay.
I guess you could reduce that down. I mean, just it's a very rough estimate, but 2/3 is kind of what we had been kind of promised by the manufacturers. It's really just that time getting in and out of the truck, lifting up meter lids, walking. You can kind of do a drive-by and pick those up, and it's substantially faster. It may. I think we're being conservative, to be honest. It could actually be
Yeah,
faster.
if you don't have to get out of the vehicle, I mean,
Right, it seems like it should go quicker than that. And how much, what percentage?
Isn't California gonna have a problem with the car idling?
With what?
Yeah,
Isn't California gonna have a problem with the car idling?
I don't think they're using
Instead of somebody getting out,
diesels.
shutting it off and
Yeah.
walking? I'm sure they will.
I think they don't jump out, jump back in. I think there's
I
kind
know
of a
they'll
route.
drive by really slow and
Oh, yeah, there's
take
that.
their things.
Yeah.
And-
Well, I'm saying that right now, they would get out at one spot and probably walk several.
Right,
and then-
shut the car off.
Yeah.
The follow-up question, what percentage of upcountry of the entire district would be AMR versus AMI at this point in time with the technology that's out there right now?
So how many do we have deployed?
No, which of them, what percentage would be drive-by and what percentage could be read by existing technology without having to do the drive-by?
So the idea is that we don't know. There was some discussion about having some propagation studies as part of this to determine if you could do fixed reads
Right.
in certain areas. That's still on the table as part of this project. That could be done. Topography is very difficult.
Right,
But the idea is most likely scenario is that the entire district becomes drive-by. meters, so.
Initially, and then fixed reading comes later, possibly?
If the propagation studies show that it can be done. There's a lot of questions as to.
So
whether-
at the installation, 100% would be read by drive-by?
Yeah.
Well, we don't know.
Yeah.
So we would make those determinations after the preliminary engineering report. There'd be a much more detailed analysis that we would look at and probably get different proposals. But I think at this point, the assumption is we would start with all drive-by meters, but we haven't gotten down to that level of detail yet.
I have a question on safety. You have a statement in here that implementation would reduce the risk of worker compensation claims. Do we have? How many do we have per year?
We've had some injuries out there, and a lot of it has to do with, kind of stooping up and down and.
We just had a dog bite recently.
bites, yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have an appreciable amount of claims, is what you're saying. Yeah?
I don't know if we have a number on it.
No, I don't know, but I mean, my short time here in the last 5 years, we've had a couple injuries to meter readers, and then the dog bites happened.
This is more a proactive move to prevent them.
Right, that's what this is saying, yeah.
And we've had a couple slips and falls just within this past year associated with, some meters are not located in an easily
Yeah, that's
accessible
what,
place.
yeah.
And so as a result, you've got meter readers traversing 2x6 bridges across, runoff waterways in a storm event and trying to get through a backyard and under bush and under brush, and so it creates some issues.
Well, it might be kind of nice if you're talking about this workman's comp, for all the years that we've been physically going out and reading the meters, how many workman's comp claims are there? I mean, if you're gonna use that defense as a reason to spend the $6 million, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Couple questions.
Yes, go ahead if you're ready.
Well, what I'm concerned about, I mean, I think we ought to be able to put a number, a financial number, and if it's one employee, that's certainly part of that equation, and then the workers' comp claims or time off on the injuries, that's another part. But I'm curious as to how that matches up with the debt service over the 40 years. Have we made an estimate of what we think the debt service will be over the 40 years?
So
Annual debt service.
So in the discussion here, there's a paragraph in there, and it talks about 207,000 as an annual.
There's two graphs at the
A
end.
little under 300.
There's two tables at the
Yeah,
back.
it's 207,000. It's 207,658 per year over the life of the 40-year loan.
And the payment over a 20-year loan will be 328, and the payment over a 40-year would be 207. And we'd save almost $1.5 million in interest by paying it off in a 20-year loan.
Right.
Yeah, so there's an option there. These are things that I talked about with Jeff prior to his departure. He said you could forecast out a more aggressive schedule for paying it off, if that's something. He actually, originally, when the discussions happened with the USDA, had lobbied for a shorter term of the loan because kind of want to match it up with the life cycle of the infrastructure itself. And so they did not, they only offered the 40 years.
Let me ask this, if they offer a 40-year loan, but we pay in a manner that's a 20-year, can we do that?
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
There's no penalty for
There's
paying
no-
it off.
So that's really just a decision. The 40-year loan is immaterial. It's just a
Right.
matter of what we decide to.
I can't imagine this going out 40 years. In fact, I think we would probably be doing a pretty regular evaluation as to what the cash flow needs are and how much we can save on interest by paying it off early, or even not just paying it off early, but at the end of construction prior to USDA, because USDA won't actually disperse funds until the construction is complete. And if we get to the end of construction and we look at our financial picture and we realize, you know what, we only need to borrow $1 million or $2 million or $3 million for this project rather than the whole $5 million, then let's keep that interest as low as possible, keep the debt amount as low as possible, pay it off as quickly as possible
Yeah,
to save
no, I
on
agree with
interest.
Wouldn't you know that prior to the end of construction?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a constant evaluation based, just looking at cash flow, looking at what other projects we might need the debt ratio for, and balancing that against this. So yeah, I think we'll be looking at it regularly.
Well, speaking of our debt ratio, how will this affect it?
So yeah, I
Obviously
guess
negative.
right now you still have the USDA loan for Reach 3A. It's still kind of, you have debt service for that for quite some time.
What I'm thinking of is our loan-to-debt ratio in regards to West Point.
Yeah, so we did make sure that this would not affect that when Jeff was evaluating on this, and that this was actually contemplated as part of that.
Oh, it
so
was.
that we did some
The
savings
SRF
in-
grant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is this one of the tipping points that's causing us?
No, that was one of the factors that was considered when evaluating whether to pursue this. So it was whether or not it would prevent us from receiving that grant at West Point.
Okay, and the answer is yes or no?
Is no, it would not.
Okay.
Of the of this project, $5 million is a loan and $1 million is a grant. At what point would the grant come? And the timing, at the beginning, at the end, in the middle, periodically?
I don't believe that they can start to give you the grant. They can't give it to you up front until construction begins. So then they can slowly disperse it once construction begins.
Over what period of time do we anticipate that?
You would get it over the life of the construction.
Okay.
And then, yeah, so And then I did want to mention, I'm sorry, on the discussion on the SRF, this is water, the West Point project is sewer, so I kind of forgot about that, but, you know, that was mostly paying off.
Is the loan, is it set up where we have to spend the $5 million to get $1 million grant? Or is, if we end up spending $4 million, we still get the $1 million?
Yeah, I don't believe that that's conditioned. You know, sometimes you have to be flexible. I mean, we really don't know a variety of factors for this project. You know, got to figure out the technology is going to be chosen, the vendors, and, you know, who's going to construct it. It's
Well,
still,
you know, the way I look at it, 2.37 now, you know, that's extremely low, you know,
Yeah.
and not gonna go back down anytime soon, I would imagine. So, I mean, it's almost a no interest loan by itself. I mean,
Peter, did you guys look at any Prop 1 grant availability?
Yeah,
Instead of doing it all as one, with so much of the DAC funds available out there, you know, West Point could use DAC and Sheep Ranch and whatever else you need. It seems nice to have it as one package deal, it seems cleaner, but if we could save money and not have to do a $5 million loan and use more Prop 1 funds, and I think there's a couple other bonds out there for next year, isn't there?
we do have project proposals within the two IRWM plans. So we have the one for the MAC plan to cover West Point and Valley Springs, and then also I believe Joel submitted one for the Highway 4 corridor as well. So those are incorporated into the plan, and they could be eligible if they were selected.
But is that the replacing the water meters?
That's correct. So they're incorporated into the plans today. It's just a matter of would they be selected?
Funding yet?
Yeah, was there funding, and would they be selected by the IRWMs as a priority project? You're competing against others.
But if it's a match for the guidelines in that particular grant, they would be selected. I wouldn't see that why they wouldn't be.
Yeah,
There's a D-stand side.
and you know, I mean, this is federal money, so there's nothing to prevent us from continuing to pursue that during the time frame of this project. You know, I think Prop 1 funds are, there's one pot of money right now that's in two phases for IRWMs. There's not a specific match in Prop 1 for this type of project on its own. You know, a lot of those, Prop 1 had a variety of projects included, you know, associated with the environment and various fish passage issues and other infrastructure needs. But I mean, yeah, I guess I'd have to go back and take a look again and see if there's one that's on its standalone.
You know, with the, you know, the water plan that the state has to conserve water and everything, if this would help us with water loss and reliability, it seems like you could have some grant funds out there. If not today, you know, in the future. I just think with the USDA, it seems, in my experience, it's more loan more often than not than grant. And if it's something that, you know, we gotta get on this, it's a high priority, I could see doing it. But I'm just not certain if this is the right timing or not. And I also, since I said about timing, I think since Rebecca is here, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have Rebecca get an opportunity to look through it and then give us her feedback as well, of what she thinks about this package.
Can I continue with the presentation just to get through kind of the project benefits?
Sure.
And then we
Could
can
could
have
I
more
just
discussion on it?
make one statement, and that's the fact that I really, your 20 and 40-year schedule estimate is just so right on. I mean, it's so easy to understand.
Yeah, I can't take credit for that. That's just
Oh.
a spreadsheet.
Oh.
Yeah, so
Who
But-
did that?
it's just readily available on the internet, but I can send it to you if you're interested.
Go ahead, take credit for it.
I think he should take credit for it. He did.
Yeah, you found it.
So, so as part of my memo, I also just did a quick inventory. It's not very detailed, but just looked at the age of the meters out there. I had John Gomes kind of pull that information. As you can see, we have quite a few meters out there that are well beyond their expected life frame or lifetime. So the manufacturer recommended for swapping them out. So this would allow us to take that and just swap all the meters out in one big project and get it done. I kind of highlighted a little bit about the lost revenues to under or non-registering meters. Kind of, we threw a kind of loose number associated with an annual losses associated with assuming a 5 to 10% under registering meters across the board. And then that was a result in lost revenues of $75,000 to $150,000 as a result of that. So, and that was based on some kind of real numbers with an inventory of what's going on out there. So I mean, there's some revenue that we could be losing today. I would ascertain a guess that we are losing some revenue today. So we have some reads that just have zeros too. So being able to get out there and start swapping those out at a more rapid rate, once they go dead, they just go dead. And then you've got to mobilize and get out there and replace those meters. And then improved response to leak detection and billing. Obviously, this will free folks up. You know, the one benefit of these types of automatic meter reading is that they store data in them. If somebody had a leak and they get a bill that's really large, a meter reader could be, because they're freed up, could go out, take direct information from that meter. It could be stored for 5 to 6 months, and they could see the exact point when the consumption shot through the roof and recognize probably when the leak happened.
Don't we automatically look at those things? I mean, when we have a,
You'd still have to go back out and grab it.
oh,
through
yes,
the
I
drive-by.
realize that, but,
Yeah,
you know.
but, you know, it could get flagged, and then we would know. And so it creates a lot of issues for the customer service department.
Oh,
People
absolutely.
get pretty frustrated, and a lot of that has to do with our two-month-long billing cycle. And so we refund people, we do leak adjustments, be a little bit more precise if that was the case. So.
Is there a, as on our manual meters, we have the triangle in the center. Is there an indicator that somebody could check their meter manually?
Actually, that's a Dana question.
Yeah.
So,
There is?
yeah, okay.
Is it similar or is it just something different?
So actually, for an automatic meter with no moving parts, you flip the lid open and then you can actually read it in gallons per minute. And it'll flash a little water drop that shows it's flowing. And then you actually can close the lid and open it again, and it'll give you totals. And you can close the lid and open it again. And if you understand that, you know, if you...
Well, so the water drop is if everyone turns, like, anytime somebody asks me if they have a leak, I'd go turn off all your irrigation, and the triangle in the center will turn. So the triangle in the center is replaced by a water drip.
And a flow rate, so it could say 0.3
Gallons per minute? Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and
that's
it's
great.
down to 0.1. So you could say, well, it sounds like you might have a toilet that's running,
Yeah,
or, you know, something like that.
sure.
You know, the PG&E smart meter technology, is that available to water companies at all, or is it something that is now or potentially being looked at?
Well, so
That's-
Because that's a no drive-by, right? That's just a,
Just
that's
telemetry.
what we're talking about, what Peter's presenting to you today, is that, so that there is a component here that once the drill down is complete on the project, like we were discussing, we could get a better understanding of whether or not we could have automatic reads that would just feed the database here at the administrative building and flag high flow rate, low flow rate, or no flow rate, or any
So-
issue that we would want to look at.
so you have the technology for that, it's just that you haven't gotten through this enough to see if that's something you could either do or afford?
It exists. It exists. We just,
Yep.
I think one of the things that PG&E uses theirs for is time of day of use. Is that same technology involved in these meters?
It can flag different times of the day to look at, to pull data as needed. So I don't know if you would necessarily
Several times
approach
they've
that
said that they
the
would-
same way, but you could actually mine data
direct feed
in
it.
detail to fit your needs.
But we don't have time of use rates the way electrical
Right.
utilities do.
No, not
Not
that we
yet.
would ever need it.
Not until the governor tells us we have to.
Right.
Just to further answer that question, so if we did have the AMI, which is coming back real time or every couple minutes to us through a series of towers, then you can hook it up to things like Water Smart or Drop Counter, which is then hooked up to customer accounts. You can have flags in real time to that customer on their smartphone, and so they could know immediately if they had a leak or any suspicious or weird activity. You can also lock off or unlock meters from the customer service department's desk instead of going out and doing that. But honestly, from what I've seen, this is probably more advanced than what is going to work for us right now. And so we're going to need to rely on either monthly or bi-monthly reading, and then taking that data, it'll be in our software system. Once we get that read from the drive-by, we'll be able to look and drill down and tell a customer when they used that water, what time of day, how long it lasted, and then from our desks, without having to go back, we'll be able to say, well, it was on October 23rd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and you used 3,000 gallons during that time. And then that'll help us with customer service significantly.
6-inch pipe.
On this figure right here, I pulled this from another presentation. You could essentially have something similar to that bar graph that would show, as you can see, this is probably not the best graphic, but you would see when, sprinklers come on, there would be kind of like an up and down, but the identified in the lower part would show you where that continuous leak occurred. So that would be saying, well, I wasn't home at these hours. They would have data that would be stored within that meter that would show, well, yeah, I agree with you. It's flat, but you're still using water even though you're not home. And so that would recognize the leak on that side. And then, so that's kind of just the quick and dirty on the improved customer side of things. And then, obviously better alignment for water loss accounting. And, while water losses have historically driven the district's CIP decisions, so if you were able to kind of start to parse out different sections of the district and identify where consumption's occurring and match that up with production in a better and more meaningful way, you might be able to save money on CIP because you would be perhaps only addressing areas that that have much higher leakage rates. So that there's some cost savings there. And then also the regulatory response, we know that things are in momentum right now associated with the legislative bills that came out for making conservation a way of life. And we will be subject to new regulations by 2023 that will probably have strong and hard standards for what they expect as far as water losses in our systems. And we unfortunately live in an area that's got a lot of pipeline in between different customer turnouts, and as a result we have quite a bit of losses, and it's just kind of the nature of the areas that we serve here.
Yeah, I have a question. The district has finite resources when it comes to funding capital improvements?
Right, I mean, R&R is not, there's not a limited amount of money in R&R. Right now we have about, I think 11 million in the water fund. And, I did include the 3-year projection, which included this project in your packet. And there's pretty ambitious projects. We have a $8 million project right now ongoing up on Evans Pass, and then several other projects that have been identified. So this is just viewed as a tool that could free up some of that R&R, or perhaps more targeted ways of addressing CIP long term. So fixing leaks, things like that. So, that was what that statement is. And then obviously the option of monthly billing is one that's enticing, helps low-income customers budget better. As I mentioned earlier, we have missed reads in the upper elevations where people might get a large bill 4, 6, 8 months down the line. I don't have to remind you, I guess a lot of folks are aware of this issue here at the district.
Last year was 6 months.
Yeah, and it creates issues, and so that, that's just more of an ancillary benefit. But,
But that's a big one. That's
Yeah.
certainly a big one. The customers would definitely want to go onto a one-month billing cycle.
So if we could just, reduce that 3 weeks down to 1 week, you could perhaps consolidate it into a shorter time frame and start to give people more real data and billing. So there's obviously some staff time associated with converting to monthly billing, so that's the alternative. And there might be some additional costs on that, but you have to outweigh the benefits to the costs on that. So.
It would be a big step forward for public relations to have people understand that they're paying $70 a month instead of $140 a month. They just kind of get confused about that.
He's nodding his head. So yeah, just in closing, I think the opportunity here today was to provide you with the more information you need, obviously, to determine whether or not you think this is a good fit. This project is on the CIP right now. Obviously, it was kind of under projected as far as the total cost once those were visited by the district engineer. And, I think for your purposes, I just wanted to be responsive to that request at the time. But this is something that the district's been looking at for more than a decade. And it's obviously been a priority. It's been incorporated into the CIP, and it was incorporated into the 3-year cash flow this last go-around. So.
Excuse me, have we done any asking other districts if they've changed out their meters and looked at all the situations that they've encountered, or?
Yes, I believe so. Just so you know, everywhere everyone we've talked to is that these don't just turn on. There's a lot of troubleshooting that has to go on. So just because they're all on the ground and live doesn't mean that it's going to work. So there's the construction time frame. There's a lot of planning up front. There's the rollout, which might actually be the shortest time frame. And then it's the integration that really takes a substantial amount of time. Just mind you, even if they're in the ground, they can still be manually read. So, there would be some time and lag there where they would still have to probably read those manually until everything can be made sure that they can just drive by and get it done. So everything we've heard from other districts is that there's promises made by these manufacturers that these things are just going to fire up and go, and they do take a little more time to bring online. So.
But you're going to thoroughly investigate when you put that out to bid.
Yeah, and I think that it'd be interesting. I think we've talked about how if to go forward with a bid, how we do that, because there may be a preferred technology or other meter manufacturer, and so it's going to be a complex bidding process. It's one of those ones that blends professional services with construction. So,
Does that?
So there's no obligation at this point by USDA or the district other than just getting the offer.
The only thing that kind of lends itself to, or leans toward an obligation is this letter from USDA that said that the conditions set forth under sections 1 through 3 must be met prior to construction and no later than 1 year from the date of this letter. The letter is dated back in August, so we'd only have 10 months. What is that? Just a form letter, or is there some? Is there a clock ticking on our opportunity here with USDA on this?
That is correct, and we would need to start to put things in motion to go out to bid on this. If that's
Okay, well, others have asked a lot of questions. I'm going to ask some too. We go to all these Aqua meetings, and probably 33% of the vendors there at the Aqua vendors area are selling these meters. And I recall having a fairly lengthy conversation with one of the vendors, and the figure that I remember was $250 a meter. Is that what you guys are experiencing? So, and I have to tell you that I'm not in favor of going, $6 million for this project where the meters would cost, what was it, $3,250,000, and I frankly would like to see this come back to the engineering committee with a little bit of sweat equity or whatever we want to call it. My concept is that we would get 5 of these meters where we can go out and install them just as a basis, just as a trial basis. I mean, we know we want to use a particular vendor. We'll just go out and install 5 of them and see how long it takes. So I think we could do it with our own forces by hiring an extra couple of guys and eliminate the bond council at $75,000 and eliminate the $1 million worth of, no, $500,000 worth of contingencies. These are figures that are just stupid. I don't, they may be legitimate, but I'm not convinced that they are. So, I mean, Jeff and I could go out and do 10 of them in a day, couldn't we?
Yes, you could.
Yeah. But realistically, if you took a 24-month time frame, you'd only have to install 18 of them a day. I mean, if you just devoted your time to that. And my thought is that our forces have to be there looking at the meter anyway. So if they, I just think that we could hit a rhythm where you read a meter, okay, this is the last meter reading on this thing, you switch it out, because it's just a coupling on each end of the meter, and if they fit exactly, I mean, granted, there may be some conditions where you'd have to remove a box to get access because it's filled with the results of a gopher filling in the meter box, but this is the same amount of money we're spending on the pipeline going up to your house, and it's not that big a deal. I mean, it's just tiny little implements that you have to put in. So, would you like to see this come back to engineering to kick it
Sure,
off?
yeah, I'd like to know more about I mean, I am a little curious as to why we sent it out to bid, but, I'm not up for hiring, a couple new employees that are gonna last forever either. Employees, you can't hire them and fire them, you gotta keep them forever.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I don't know, let's look at the growth projections and see if we might, I just think that there's a different way to look at it, and I.
Well, I'd like to, yeah, I would love to explore that.
Something like, okay, well, we won't do 6 million, but we'll give you 3 million and get it done, and see what they can come up with. You know what I mean? It's like, that's all we're gonna be able to spend if you want it done.
Well, again, I think I asked the
That's
question, earlier, that do we have to spend the entire $5 million? Now, is there the opportunity for us to do this in-house? And I'm not saying that we have the labor, I know everyone thinks our guys have nothing else to do.
Right.
We all know they're busy, but if there was the ability for us to do this, could we still qualify for the loan and the grant?
I don't know the answer to that question.
What's that?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I don't know why that would disqualify us. As long as we comply, the USDA, anytime you get a USDA loan, because we actually had one when we started this building project, super restricted, and you have to take the lowest bidder. You have no choice, you have to take the lowest bidder. And so I don't know that we necessarily want to get into that situation, or not. I mean, it's restricted. There's no question about the USDA loans. There's a lot of stuff that goes with it. So if there was a way to utilize our manpower and not have to go out to bid, I certainly think we ought to explore that. So I'd like to at least find out the answer as to whether or not we can do this with our own crews. And then, because then it gets back to the point too, because, when we could borrow money from ourselves at a rate similar to what we get when we're in the bank. So we could borrow money from ourselves as long as we can repay it, probably cheaper than we could get this USDA loan that has a lot of restrictions. Now, but we can't give ourselves $1 million grant. So I mean, there's a difference there. But there's just a couple of things that, just my history with the USDA, when we were trying to build this facility with it, it was very, very difficult. And we ended up rejecting all bids, in fact, because we didn't want to take the lowest bidder. So we rejected the whole thing. So I mean, Russ, you guys both bring up a good point. I'm a proponent of doing this somehow.
Oh, I absolutely, don't misunderstand. I think it's essential that we replace the meters, but it sticks in my throat that you look at the budget, the project budget, and there's, you know, $500,000 here and $75,000 there. That's big money just for fluff, and I don't.
Well, the contingencies don't mean you have to spend it, right?
Yeah.
They just want it in there in case it does happen, in case they want to make sure the project gets completed, so.
Well, I just heard something that I'm in favor of this project. I am as well. I'm in favor of doing this, and I would like to continue studying it and looking into the different options of how to do it, how this USDA grant may or may not fit into it. The replacement of the meters is still on our list, our CIP list. It will remain there until it gets done. I think it is a great idea moving forward, is how we move forward with it. If we can get the grant, the $1 million grant, and through that 3-year process, and get a loan from USDA of a much smaller amount, and utilize our own crews for doing it, for doing a good part of it, that all sounds like a lot better approach. But I think we should still continue looking into this and learning more about it.
So it sounds like the direction is to definitely bring this back to the engineering committee, to look a lot at the budget refinement on that, and then we need to answer the questions as to whether or not we can use in-house staff to do the work and still potentially receive the funding. Also, there's questions about whether there will be the typical conditions associated with the USDA bidding requirements, and whether or not those are potentially prohibitive, and then eventually bring it back, obviously, for more concrete direction from the board at a higher level.
The engineering.
I'm just curious too.
I agree.
Is it just another thought process? Because we would do this over a 5-year period. Would we be issuing one RFP for the whole entire program, or would we be splitting it up, or could we? Or can we do a hybrid? Can we do some and put an RFP out? I mean, because I would certainly, I mean, if we have to hire a team, contractor to come in and do certain levels, maybe there is at least maybe it's a hybrid where we can put out for RFP more difficult ones, or we do the more difficult ones ourselves, and then RFP the easier ones. I mean, can we do some sort of a hybrid also?
I'm looking at Charles, but I'm not sure. We can take a look at that though too.
We're going to down in San Diego in just a little over a month. We'll be in a room with 20 manufacturers that we can talk to about this, and talk to them about the hypothetical scenarios, what they've done in other districts. And how long would it take one manufacturer to come up with 13,000 of these meters? I mean, it'd take them a year or more to even produce them, I would think. So,
They could have a good discount too.
but
Well, that's
could you
good
produce them
because
faster?
If I had 13,000 to do, I probably would figure it out.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about. We need to figure it
But
out.
we're not gonna use 13,000 in a year. That's the point. It's a 5-year program. We're gonna put in a couple thousand a year.
Yes.
That's not,
Is
it
that
said it had to
because
be completed in 2 years.
5 years.
How about, no.
It said
In
5.
the USDA thing. The other thing that you need to find out is if the USDA has any flexibility on this thing. You tell them that you know, if they're expecting us to get this thing up and running within 10 months, that we can't do it, so.
Well, that's just the bidding. That's just the bidding, obviously. So, yeah, you would have to bid within, go out to bid within a year.
It's just the design and the bid.
Right, but we also have the ability to reject those bids at that time.
Right.
I mean, we're not committed, just because we go out to bid doesn't mean we're committed to spend any money.
That's right.
I think that
Some clarity
offer-
on that for the board would probably be helpful.
I think the offer and the terms are limited to a year here. So you're gonna basically have to reset if you don't get it done.
Right, and the interest rate might change is the risk. But these terms are locked in for that period of time.
For 10 months.
Right, and we could reject bids. We don't have to do the project at that point. If we were gonna go that road, I would hope that we'd be able to make that determination now, because we'll spend quite a bit of staff time on it over the next year. That's why we want to present as much of it as we can to the board now and get that feedback at this point. But if we did go through all those, through that whole process and we weren't happy with the bids, then there's no obligation for us to accept them.
Well, we, just being simplistic, like Russ and I often can be, we have a fee when we switch out somebody's meters. It's $300 or something like that.
The meter said approximately
600. Okay.
the box, valves, meter.
So I would assume that you, Damon, could put together a number that you were comfortable with, an average cost for our staff to, and then we'll at least have that to make a comparison.
That's correct.
Would you want to charge the customer for that? For replacing a meter?
Well, hopefully we're not, hopefully we're not charging them more than it costs, because if we are, then it's illegal.
But why, I don't see why if you're
No, there's-
upgrading a meter if the meter's working perfectly fine.
No, what I'm saying, listen, the contractor that we're gonna hire doesn't care. I mean, they're gonna charge us something to install the meter. What I'm trying to get at is, can we install it cheaper?
Cost, okay.
And so, I mean, we are supposed to base our cost on what it actually costs us to do.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that we've done
Sounded like maybe we're gonna try and.
But that doesn't include the
have
cost.
customer reimburse us, and I'm like, no.
That'd be wonderful.
That'd be
yeah.
trouble.
No, it wouldn't
Yeah.
be, it would be wrong.
Yeah, and
Unless
one
it's
of the
with new
things that,
customers,
you know,
of course.
one of the things that we always have to take into consideration is our construction time. I mean, we're now, you know, this is October.
She's got plenty
I
of
just
time.
want to remind you, and so hopefully we'll get
Do you-
inclement weather.
Do you see some storm clouds somewhere? But, you know, reminding you about basic human nature, I mean, if this project goes out to bid and we have, you know, in the record that we're expecting the construction to cost $1,600,000, that's what the bids are gonna be. So, that's
Yeah. This
based on
wasn't,
observation over time.
Nice information.
this was
Okay.
informational update only, so
Yes.
that's fine. Yeah.
But
We'll see you later.
We did get some direction on the future. Okay, cool, thank you.
all right. This meeting is really dragging, isn't it? So,
Are you patting yourself on the back again?
yeah.
Public comment?
Is there any public comment on this particular item? Come on, make yourself heard. Of course.
Oh, goody, where'd it go? There it is. On this disbursements of the grant stuff, I went and looked up, and I really need somebody to help me clarify this to me, because it's sort of messing with my mind. The way I'm reading this in RUS Instruction 1780.45D, they don't disperse any of the grant except when the interim financing of the total estimated amount of the loan funds needed during discussion is arranged. And all interim funds have been dispersed. And grant funds are needed before the loan can be closed. Now, the way I'm understanding is, and like I said, I need clarification on this. I'm hoping I'm wrong. It's making it sound like we don't get any of the grant until the very end, or we've fully funded this all ourselves
During construction.
during construction.
So USDA won't disperse any money until construction's complete.
Even the grant.
That's my understanding. We
Okay, so I'm
clarify that, but that's my
not
understanding.
confused on that one.
So the interim financing provision is frustrating It's one that they didn't used to enforce. It's a standard portion of provision in their letter of conditions that they didn't used to enforce. They used to grant waivers for it all the time, and they no longer grant those waivers. So now interim financing is required, and it's costly, and it's frustrating. There is the possibility of self-financing, I think. We need to clarify that with USDA. But if we have to go out and find a lender to pay the contractor during the construction period, then that's a separate loan from a private institution that we're taking out for that 2-year
Right.
period or
No,
whatever it might be.
I understand that. That's
Right.
why I was really hoping, I misunderstood about the grant.
You nailed it.
Disbursement. I'm not, unfortunately. Okay, I'm looking at these payoff amounts, and I'm going, and I know we need to do this. I know that you need to do this, that we definitely need this technology out in the field. When I think of my small town of roughly 600 people back in Iowa, I've had it for a long time. I'm going, how in the heck did they get it and we don't have it? It's one of the things my little sister likes to rub in my face. Anyway, can we, I mean, I guess what it comes down to is the numbers. Are we going to be saving enough to actually afford this? That, I mean, in dollars and cents, are we going to be able to show, let's face it, the public, that we are going to be saving enough over the time of this 20-year loan or whatever, that we can actually afford this and it is in the best interest? I know it's in the best interest of the district, but they're going to be looking at the dollars and cents. And they're going to want to see in dollars and cents that we could afford this doing it this way instead of another way. That concerns me. And I looked at the schedule of when you have certain areas scheduled to do this. And Ebbets Pass was number 1, and West Point was number 5. Thanks to our lovely Board of Supervisors yesterday, I think West Point should be number 1, because what the meter readers encountered up there prior was one of the reasons we started looking at this in the first place. Okay?
You're talking about water consumption?
I'm talking about meter readers.
Well, I know that I think I know what you mean. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think you do too. And that's one reason we started looking at this in the first place. Not water consumption, but the safety of our meter readers.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were running into up there prior.
But
It's not something I'm saying because I think this is going to happen. I'm saying it because it has happened in the past.
Okay. If I can try to answer your first question about, can we afford to do this? Part of the answer lies in the fact that the existing meters don't last forever. They're going to have to be replaced. And I think that it would be very penny wise and pound foolish to replace a $175 meter with a $175 meter when you could add a few bucks to get something that is compatible with new technology. That's my response.
Yeah, I know, but like I said, the public is going to ask for hard numbers. And I think it would behoove the district to be able to show them. I know they're going to be there. We just have to get them together and show them.
Yeah, well.
Okay, that's all I'm asking for, is to getting them together so we can actually prove it to other members of the public on how this is necessary, how it is going to save us in the long run, and everything, because it will. This is critical. We need to get it done.
Yeah.
but we need those numbers for the public.
I agree with you completely.
What if we were to start like a customer outreach campaign, starting to give them an idea of the direction we're going with changing to these automatic readers, doing some little town hall meetings? We, you know, just to kind of start getting them used to the idea, so when it does come up and we're spending, you know, however much we spend, it won't be so, what are you talking about, kind of a
I
thing.
think Michael will have something to comment about on that.
We're going to schedule some town hall meetings coming up here in the next few months. And I imagine this would be one of many topics that we try to cover.
Will you do me a favor when you're in my district? I'd like to go, so.
We were going to keep you in the dark on
Okay,
that.
well, just coordinate me to make sure I can do it around my schedule.
Absolutely. We're going to, yes, we would coordinate that with each of the directors. Absolutely.
Real quick, David, when I asked you the cost of a meter, that was the meter cost. What I'm saying is, what do we charge for the installation? What does it cost us for the installation?
So that is what we charge. I don't know.
No, I know, but that's got a meter. It's got a meter included as well.
It's got a
That's
meter
the
and a box.
Box, lid, valves, and
So that's the whole 9
That's the
yards.
whole shooting match with labor.
So that's 600. I was thinking
Yep.
it was going to be that we were doing 600 for the installation, but that's not the case.
Right.
Okay, but while we're on the subject, I can see that 90% of the new meters would go in the same box. I mean, you just reach down there. There's bound to be a specialized tool that is like an open, like a box wrench with a ratchet capability. You just reach both ends, click twice, and take the old one out, put the new one in, and click it back in. So.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we can assume, and I don't know this for sure, but the majority of our meter installations would have valves on the customer side and valves on the district side. But that's not necessarily the case. And we can also presume that
I mean, cutoff valves.
we would have to use a crimping tool and then put a full circle repair clamp on whatever side of the meter that we're gonna crimp. And so that's gonna be time, and then that's gonna reduce the integrity of that service line, whether it's the customers or ours. So there's those issues. There's also issues associated with the age of the meter box itself, whether the meter box is concrete or plastic. You know, that varies depending on service area. So there's a bunch of unique or details, perhaps is a better word, that are associated with the meter installation that are not just simply radio read the meter. It's the box.
If the average cost is $700, we're talking about a $9 million project.
Right. So, right.
I'm just trying to bring you guys up to speed on that.
Yeah.
The real
Yeah.
cost.
Right.
Would you get a meter for me? I want to see how long it takes.
Absolutely. So, I mean, incidentally, you know, we are installing radio read meters currently, so replacing.
You're replacing the old,
Manually, the
you're
manual
replacing
read
manual
meters.
for manual.
Now that you don't like it, we will.
We are currently replacing, anytime we have to replace a meter, we're putting a radio read meter in.
You
But
are,
we read it manually.
okay, all right.
So we're already buying radio read meters right now and we're installing them,
Yeah.
but at a very, very slow pace.
If it wasn't such a big number, I wouldn't be interested in kicking back so much about this, but I'll talk to you offline about this. I just want to go out and put my eyeballs on it.
This was for information only. I think we're gonna have a lot more information. I think they're still digging, the staff's still digging up,
Okay.
looking into the loan, looking into the way to do this and the costs, it sounds like. A lot more to come. Is that correct, Peter?
Yeah, I think we've already got some ideas to bring our existing vendor out for maybe in a presentation to the engineering committee, so you can
Yeah.
maybe good to understand how they deploy things. I think, you know, just from their experiences and things like that.
Okay, next item 5, old business. We have a review of the district's public safety power shutoff emergency action plan and the implementation thereof.
Good afternoon, President Thomas, directors. I will try to work through this quickly and not mess up on the dates. But there's a lot going on associated with PG&E's implementation of public safety power shutoffs. We actually started one about 15 minutes ago.
Oh, it did go?
Yeah, and we'll touch upon the map
okay.
associated with that at the end of this presentation. And incidentally, we'll talk a little bit about more future anticipated PSPS
Is
events.
my house turned off?
It's probably going to be. So here's
We have a
the
crew on
breakdown.
the way to your house right now.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So just,
Directors, I like it.
Did you see the one in the back of my picture?
just to run everybody through the timeline here of the PSPS event from a couple weeks ago. So we received notification of the possibility of an event on Monday, and the plan for implementation was Wednesday the 9th. And we received this map pretty much at the outset. So this map gave a breakdown of the affected areas for the PSPS implementation, and you can see it's pretty much most of the county with the exception of Valley Springs, Rancho Calaveras area. Actually, which is a huge, it's a huge relief to us in the field because the generators for the Jenny Lind water treatment plant and for the La Quintana wastewater plant consume quite a bit of diesel. And so they need to be attended to quite often. So on Tuesday, the district issued a joint press release and preparation began, meaning we began fueling and checking the operation of pretty much all of the district's standby generators out in the field in preparation for Wednesday. And as I'm sure you can all remember, you know, the initial word that we got was midnight Wednesday. So essentially, the turn of the day from Tuesday to Wednesday, the power's going to go out everywhere. And then we heard, well, no, it's going to go out in some places. So we lost power at about 12:30 Wednesday morning, midnight in West Point, and pretty much not anywhere else. And then we started to hear, okay, it's going to go out at 10 a.m. the rest of the county, and we didn't really lose power until 3:30 in the afternoon on the 9th. So that included pretty much the rest of the district's facilities that we were anticipated to lose power, and just a couple pictures of staff preparing for the event and staff in the midst of the event. As you can see, Chris and one of our electricians on the left preparing leads for generators at the Copper Cove water treatment plant, and then the senior operator, Bill Cardinal, reading the logbook with his headlamp on in the dark. We were running one small generator that would only power the PLC, the computer system for the facility. As we'll talk about here in a second, we had issues with the standby generator power in Copperopolis. During the outage, right out of the gate, we experienced an issue with the water pump on the generator at the water treatment facility, and it was starting to leak. And so what we did is we just essentially had staff monitor it until we determined we couldn't operate the generator anymore without damaging the generator itself. So we shut it down, and we, luckily, let me backtrack a few. Luckily, the request for conservation worked tremendously, and the community in Copperopolis had already reduced usage, but now we were in even more of a critical mode as we had lost the water pump to a 600 kW generator. And as you can imagine, as the light came over the horizon the next morning and Michael and I became aware of the situation, we started to reach out for generators. You're not going to find a generator on the West Coast in the middle of a PSPS event with 800,000 people affected. So we reached out through OES and through PG&E. OES found a generator for us in Texas, and that wasn't going to work, and PG&E came through with a 600 kW for the Copper Cove water treatment plant. We were able to get that online in the evening. I want to say it was the 10th, and this is the picture you see on the right is the Vince Siegel Electric, the subcontractor for PG&E, laying out the leads for the connection to the bus bar in the generator building at the Copper Cove water plant. So there's the picture of the standby generator itself. Excuse me. We were back in power, generator power at, I want to say 11 o'clock at night after their arrival. We made water for approximately 1 hour, and then the generator at the raw water pump station failed. And so it had failed in the summer when where there was the unfortunate plane crash into Lake Tulloch. The generator operated for that weekend and had a radiator issue. And so mechanical staff had gone through, replaced the radiator cap, all hoses, and flushed it, and pressure tested it, and everything was good. And so after the failure, staff arrived on site, and they essentially saw the same thing they saw in the summertime, was some radiator fluid on the ground. It looks like it could have possibly lost a portion of a hose or had a leak in the actual radiator. So when they went to operate it again, they didn't find anything. And so after some troubleshooting, the operators and the mechanics were able to understand that if we operated the facility at half load, essentially, half of the raw water pumps operating, it wouldn't overheat. So we were able to make water and meet demand without causing any further damage to the generator. We did issue a request for further conservation, and that made all the difference. It actually extended our operating time by approximately 10 more hours, which is a great help. Here's a couple more pictures of the generator. This is actually, one picture snap, and then the power came on because the generator energized, and you see the light and the lights behind the water treatment facility.
Damon, I have a question. You
Yeah.
said you reached out to say additional conservation. What method you do to notify everybody?
So that was a
We
website post?
did, especially once
curious.
we
Yeah.
had the generator failure down there, the situation became much more critical. So we reached out to radio stations, Facebook, website, press releases, everything we could do to blast that message out. And it did get picked up, and people paid attention. People responded. Yeah, we were very grateful to the community for listening and conserving.
And then we kept that conservation in order as we made water. So, and that really helped us actually get back to square zero and get a little bit ahead in terms of overall supply. Here are a couple of snapshots of, so what happened during the transfer of power and the loss of the generator is the whole facility just essentially went dead. And that usually doesn't happen because we have an uninterruptible power source for basically the brain of the treatment facility. Well, that also went dead. So we actually had to reboot the brain. So what you see here is the senior electrician and the senior treatment operator essentially verifying that the facility came back online and was able to make water as programmed. Because we were also prepared to reprogram the facility as needed. And so here's a picture of the SCADA trend. So what you're looking at, the lines that are on the upper portion or the top of the graph are actually tank levels. And every time a line spikes like a triangle, that's a feed, and then the drop is the system demand. So it spikes like a triangle and it drops, and then we kick on another pump and it fills it back up, and then it drops. And those blue squares at the bottom of the trend are pump runs. So that's whenever a pump kicks on and it flows at a certain volume. And you can see about, let's see here. Okay, so right about here, we shut the facility down, and this is basically shut off on level, and then we kicked on again, and then we tried to top everything off and fill everything up. And we got a little bit of runtime out of here, and this is when the generator essentially went south on us. And so we had this whole duration, and right here is where we lost the brain. Oops. So this is, everything went dark here on our trend because we lost the PLC of the system. And then we brought it back online, and we were able to actually make water, and this is us limping along through the rest of the outage, and then shutting off, and then transferring back over to house power, and then starting to run again. And you can see how kind of behind the 8 ball we were in terms of overall supply, where we came from before the issue occurred, or before the outage, before the planned outage, and where we ended up. So, so the afternoon of the 10th, some of, as you guys know, some of the areas, service areas and communities in the county became back into power, however, unfortunately not copper. By the afternoon of Friday, the rest of the pass in Copperopolis was restored. This is incidentally the generator at the raw water pump station on Lake Tulloch. And you can see the fluid on the platform of the fuel tank below the generator there. And then by Saturday, almost 1 o'clock, power was restored to West Point. You know, some of the lessons learned, I think, from this PSPS event is that we do, even though we purchased approximately $30,000 worth of fuel tanks for the service areas, we do need more fuel storage and copper because there's just a heavy demand with 32 lift stations and an 800-gallon diesel tank at the raw pump station, and then 500 and 800 at the treatment facility. We run through a lot of fuel during these outages. And then Michael and I have talked about this, and I think some folks have also been contemplating it, is that we need to assess basically the critical facilities that we have within our service areas and address power shutoffs on load more regularly so we can understand potential failures through that standby generation system and address them and repair them before they actually occur during an outage. And so we're talking about possibly, you know, semi-annual tests of 24-hour runtime on generator, so that we can understand if there's going to be a failure, if it's going to blow a head gasket, it's going to blow a head gasket when we know there's no PSPS event on the horizon, so we can actually address the issue. And we can also work to replace generators as they age out based on the criticality of the facility. So the estimated cost in the staff report was about $65,000 for this event.
Yeah.
It's actually closer to $85,000. So we had a $20,000+ automatic transfer switch that also failed. And we submit those costs to Cal OES because the county did submit a declaration to FEMA. And so
What, I mean, under what premise? I mean,
well, you know, that this was a critical situation associated with public infrastructure. I'm not sure. I understand that it's a planned outage.
well, it's because it's not a, I mean, there was no declared emergency or
Right.
anything, so I'm just curious as to
The
how.
county
Yeah.
did declare.
What?
The county did declare, but they apparently are not planning to this time.
Well, the county can declare it, but unless the governor approves it.
Right.
Yeah. So here's roughly the breakdown, you know, the material costs, which include repair parts, fuel, and equipment rental, and then the overtime, double time, and standby. No straight time included in that. And here's the summary of what we just went through. And then, so we're looking at another outage here today. And so we anticipate the all clear by noon tomorrow for this outage. And you can see it's quite a bit smaller than the one we experienced a couple weeks ago. So we're looking at basically just east of Baton Road up Highway 4, Sheep Ranch, and then West Point and Murphy's area. So currently no Copperopolis, no Valley Springs area, and no San Andreas.
So it looks like that the wind is going to stop at the river on the south side?
That's right.
You know what? That's what I think is going to happen.
We put up a barrier.
And so you say by Friday?
So the complete restoration for this PSPS event will be 7 p.m. Friday. They anticipate most of the restoration to occur afternoon tomorrow. However, they don't restore after the sun goes down.
Right. I was here listening to that, yeah.
So if sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's all right.
If I could just add a couple of points, if that's okay. One, I want to point out, because it seems like, and it was very stressful. It became very difficult. Our crews did, we just can't say enough about the in some cases, 20-hour days that they were putting in, the electricians and the mechanics in particular, but our collection crew, everybody. So, I mean, it was just a really phenomenal effort. But I also want to point out that the problem was caused by those two generator failures. But outside of that, Damon and his team put a ton of work in advance of this event in planning and coming up with a new emergency action plan, and the plan worked actually very well. Our collection crew was ahead of the game, pumping down septic tanks where we knew that there was going to be a problem. the refueling effort, rotating around to all the different generators throughout the district, all of it actually worked fairly well. So I don't want the board to have the impression that we were somehow unprepared or behind the ball here. The plan actually was very, very well developed and implemented very successfully. And then we had, I think because of that, we had the resources available to focus on the areas where there were actual failures. But I just want to make sure we really emphasize that point, that our crews were prepared. You know, the plan was really good, and the implementation of it as well. So huge kudos to Damon and his crew for that.
Well, to Michael too. Michael did a great job in securing that generator for people.
Right,
So,
right.
The other, yeah, and then the other point I want to make too is just that I think what really helped us get the generator in the end was how, when we really realized how you know, the possibility of running out of water in Copperopolis is not just, it's not just an inconvenience for our customers. If there had actually been a fire while the treatment plant is down, we were going to lose pressure to fire hydrants, and that is really, I mean, we had thought about that going into this, but it really hit us upside the head that Thursday morning, I think it was, when we realized this could be a disaster. And it became a real, you know, a huge push to get a generator out there as quickly as we could. But that's something that we need to keep in mind, you know, when we talk about having, even if it means some significant expenditures, to make sure we have backup generation on site that's going to perform. The risk of failure is, or the potential consequences of failure are pretty, can be, you don't want to think about it.
Do you want to?
Consider purchasing a standby generator like the one we borrowed.
Yeah, this is something.
And have it for the whole district in these backups.
So we've talked to,
$100,000 or something?
oh no, for a 600 kW generator is probably closer to $1 million.
Oh, gee.
Did you go online to look at the cost of that 600?
I have not looked at the cost of the particular one that was brought out, no.
Well, it's used now. You should be able to buy it.
Yeah.
And we know it works.
Right, yeah.
Excuse me, how did you determine the force that you were gonna have available? I mean, you know, not everybody can work at nighttime and, you know.
Right.
But they did.
Yeah, well, and so
Thank you very
that's,
much.
so that's a large portion of the action plan is as we went in developing the action plan, we kind of talked about, we actually sat down with supervisors and said, okay, you have an emergency. How do you guys address emergencies? How have you addressed emergencies in the past? And we basically built the action plan based on the way that staff naturally respond to issues. So when we place supervisors on standby, that automatically sets the message, and we tell them, okay, we're implementing the action plan. And then basically that has detailed instructions of who's responsible for what, from Michael down to rank and file, you know, staff that just got into the field, for lack of a better term. So what that looks like in a nutshell is that the mechanical department is responsible for refueling and determining the need to refuel when and where. And then the purchasing agent is responsible for procuring the fuel deliveries from large vendors. And then if there's a hiccup, and there were hiccups because obviously everybody's asking for fuel, the construction department also has access to some subcontractors and other vendors where we can get fuel, material, and equipment. And then the construction crew and the distribution crews work together to assist the mechanics in the refueling effort. And then as items pop up, we draw staff from unaffected areas that are doing their normal day-to-day work into the emergency area to help address any issues that might crop up. And so that's really how it worked. And to Michael's point, knock on wood, because we're in the midst of it now, but up on the pass and in West Point, it was just a refueling effort, and we had normal operations of facilities, although we were on standby power. And we also, it should be noted that in anticipation of these events, we just fill everything up to almost overflow. And so we anticipate, you know, that there could be issues, and we take advantage of the fact that we have a little wiggle room in the tanks, usually out in the areas, and so we fill everything up.
One of the things that I thought was most interesting was in somewhere that I read we will have a test for fuel quality annually. I mean, you know.
So that's part of
Yeah.
one of the items that took up a lot of conversation in the development of the action plan is, okay, so we get all this additional fuel storage. Now we have all this aged fuel everywhere that's
Right.
unusable. So when can we and when can't we use it? And how do we keep track of who's fueling what with it? And so that's where we
Oh,
really came into at certain
was
times
key.
of the year. Yeah, and mechanical staff basically holds the keys to the castle associated with those fuel, tanks and use when we're not in a PSPS event.
Sorry, go ahead.
Do you take advantage of the non-taxable fuel?
The red fuel?
Yeah.
Yep, oh yeah,
Okay.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And before I forget this thought, could you tell the board that shocking revelation that you talked to me about? You talked when you mentioned the possibility
Sure.
of a catastrophic event. Who's on the hook?
Right. So when we, getting back to the point of the vulnerability of the community in those situations when fire hydrants might not be charged, what we've learned in recent years is that water districts can be held strictly liable for damages that result from there not being water at a fire hydrant. And so when we knew going into this that the main reason behind these PSPS events is PG&E shifting liability. And in this case, it shifts liability and it shifts it onto us potentially. And so if you think there's a million different scenarios that could have played out, but if there was a fire and part of the reason for the spread of the fire was the fact that that the hydrants weren't charged, that liability could have come back on the district. And if you think about a fire breaking out in a community like Copperopolis, that liability could have been astronomical. So that's another one of the things that we had thought about and anticipated or leading up to this, but it became much more real.
Well, let's get down to the financial aspects of this, because, I mean, say we have 3 or 4 of these a year, that's gonna be a couple $100,000 hit to our, potentially, to our budget. And PG&E has been able to shift the liability because of state laws that have been written. I mean, certainly, you would assume, an average person would assume that they would have legal responsibility for our costs when they do something like this. I mean, when they're not the reliable one, and we have to shift the burden. But now the governor was just talking about rebates for ratepayers.
Right.
Okay, what about utilities and others?
We're going to send them a bill.
What's that?
We'll send a bill.
PG&E,
I don't know that they'll pay attention.
I'm not joking about this.
No, I'm not either. We track all of those costs.
And who are we sending the bill to exactly, and under what authority are we going to send it?
So if there's a disaster declaration, we'll go through that process, but we'll also be working through the proper channels to submit those costs to PG&E.
Because I wonder if the disaster, I haven't heard any indication that is going to be paid, but I would imagine that under any legal scenario, you have to exhaust all opportunities. So we certainly should be billing PG&E and having them either approve or deny it, because they would be responsible before the state would be, I would assume, unless they've shifted that burdens. And I don't know enough about it, but just in the, they're not talking about the utilities cost at this point. They're just talking about $100 for ratepayer and $500 for a business or something like that.
No, there's an article, the article in the paper this morning in the Sacramento Beast indicated from PG&E that they're not, Governor Newsom is asking them to rebate $100 to every residential customer that was affected, $250 to every small business that was affected, and they said they're not doing any rebates at all, and they have no plans to.
PG&E's been very clear all along that their position is they're not liable for any costs associated with this.
Yeah.
So we're going to do everything we
else.
can to try to recover in any way that we can, but I think we also need to be prepared for the fact that may not come.
Now, okay, just so in that scenario, when we had to do the, excessive conservation, and many other districts created a conservation surcharge. you know? I just want everybody to prepare themselves for the fact that, you know, this may become such a burden. If we have to go buy $1 million generator, you know, that's well beyond our means at this time with the rate structure that we have. And
Or even just, you know, because it
well,
could
yeah,
be,
even just another.
it could be, we're anticipating another one to start Saturday evening to last, you know, maybe another 2 or 3 days.
So that's in addition to this one.
In addition to today and tomorrow. So we could be between now and Thanksgiving, we may have 10 or 12 days of PSPS time at 80 grand a day. There's your $1 million.
Was it 80 grand a day?
It was over 2.5 days.
Okay, so 40.
That's right. Okay,
Yeah.
so 40 grand a day.
But still,
And that includes some damages too that aren't
Yeah.
necessary, you know, that's probably on the high side, but maybe not, because it may be that these generators are getting tested in a way that they haven't in a long time, and we may see more of that. So yeah, no, there's a real cost here, and it
Just-
remains to be seen how big of a hit it's going to be this year.
Well, I was in New Mexico during that first thing, and I couldn't get any good information. We got to drive up to a bush on the side of the road. We call it the phone booth on the ranch anyway, just to get signal. But it was very frustrating because, you know, I didn't have anybody home. My generator, one of my generators, in the back of my truck for my ice chest. So, but we had a water emergency in Copper. But if we had had a sewer lift station emergency or failure, do we have the ability to shut water off at that time to prevent a spill? I mean, these are just some of the things I was thinking about.
yes, we do. To shut water off to that affected area, we would be able to do so. And we also have generators that are trailer mounted that are adequately sized to run.
So you're confident that the sewer side?
Sewer side, yeah, and we actually have pumper trucks that can also go address those lift stations.
But
as well.
if it was needed, we could actually shut water off.
Yeah, we could
We
isolate.
could, but the sewer system, the collection system was going into this, at least for me, that was my biggest concern. It ended up being a water treatment issue because of the size and the criticality of that generator. But
Yeah.
we've got 38 of those lift stations, right, in Copper. Most of them, not all, most of them are on backup generation. But as we know, those don't always work.
I mean, I just found it astounding. I was on a ranch in the Navajo, surrounded by the Navajo Nation, one of the poorest places, you know, in America, but they had power.
The other quick point I want to address, Director Skeda, you had asked about the possibility of buying one of those backup generators, and we talked about it months ago because we've got probably 6 or 8 in that size range. We have a few that are even bigger, 800 kW, and so what we ended up coming back to, although I think this is something that we need to revisit again, and we'll probably bring it to the engineering committee. We felt like it was a better use of our resources to upgrade old standby generators where we have them on site and make sure that the generators are running. And because of the unlikely event that one of these big ones fail, I mean, we may spend $1 million on a $600 or $800 kW trailer mounted generator. First of all, we need a big rig to pull it. And second of all, it might sit here for 10 years without any use. But when they do fail, they're the most important ones. So there's just a balance there, and so how we allocate the resources that we have to best prepare ourselves, I think we're learning. We're gathering data right now. We'll bring it back to the board and figure out what the best use of those resources will be. What I'd really love to see is whether maybe it's the county OES or maybe it's some other entity, but somebody a little bit with a bit of a broader regional jurisdiction than us getting one of those generators that they would have to deploy in these kinds of situations that would be available to a whole variety of to a whole region rather than just one agency having to incur that burden. But it's definitely something we're going to be taking a close look at, and this is going to be a constant learning process.
I'm just curious about on the 80,000 that you tabulated there. I was told that the replacement water pump for that Caterpillar generator down there was $6,000.
That's correct.
So is that included in the 80?
Yeah, yep.
Right.
It's quite a water pump.
Yeah. How about total time on that unit? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't have that number, but I can get that to you.
Yeah. I have noticed when we've gotten reports before about that there's so many miles on
Right.
vehicles and everything. It might
I'll
be
get you
interesting to
that.
see how many hours are on. I mean, the generator is obviously was probably put in when the plant was last upgraded, so it's less than 20 years old.
It's a 1996 vintage.
Yeah, we were
Both
actually
sides,
down there this morning
Yeah.
and talking to one of our electricians about it. Both the one at the treatment plant and the raw water intake pumps were installed in '96. And those are the ones that we're having the most problem with, and that's the automatic transfer switch that failed as well, '96.
Yep.
That's odd.
He's just lost power, I was just noticing.
Oh, okay.
Did you
Okay.
hear from my husband?
Okay, we're taking off today.
One comment, if you recall, when the power went off here, you and I
Yeah.
were discussing here, and
Right, yeah.
the lights went off, and that light came on, and we counted 1, 2, 3, 4, and then they came back
Boom,
up as
yep.
our generator went online.
Perfectly.
That was really good. I was glad that we were here to
Yeah.
observe that. Okay, does that conclude your report?
It does.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
Just a
you.
reminder, so Saturday night through to Monday afternoon, and we'll get a more detailed report tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
Good job,
Thank you,
Damon,
Damon.
thank you.
Thank you, Damon.
Ms. Vicky, have any comments on our PSPS? No? Okay. How about reports, general manager report? Ready for you. We're waiting for you.
I don't have a ton I don't have a lot of breadth to report because it's a very, PSPS has been a huge time suck over the last couple of weeks. And then obviously the main thing to report from last week is our trip to DC. I sent the board members the trip report. I think it was a very productive trip. In particular, the two most immediate deliverables I think that came out of it are letters of support from Congressman McClintock and Congressman Garamendi for our $1.1 million request for the tertiary treatment filter in Copperopolis. And that was really the main purpose of that trip, was to try to secure that funding in this year's federal budget. And if we don't, there's a possibility of losing that authorization. Although one of the things that we learned was that the current Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works is not a fan of the deauthorization list. So that may work to our advantage. Obviously, the still first priority is to bring that money home in this fiscal year. But if for some reason we're not able to get a budget appropriation, then maybe there is still some hope that we would stay off of the deauthorization list. But hopefully we don't have to fight that battle. But I think we gained overall a lot of, we raised a lot of attention for the project that we're proposing at the core, with the legislative staff, with the congressman, and the Office of Management and Budget. So they're anticipating our project to be included in the Army Corps' work plan for this fiscal year. That was, I thought, one of the more insightful pieces of feedback that we got from meeting with the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office was, the fact that he was now that he's aware of this project, he'll be looking for it, and if he doesn't see it in the work plan for this fiscal year, then he's going to ask why. Where is this project? And to have somebody, there that's familiar with our project that'll know to ask that question, I think is really helpful. And we'll be asking for more than just letters of support, hopefully, from Congressman McClintock. We're going to, hopefully he'll be able to get in touch with the appropriate people at the Office of Management and Budget and try to keep that project moving along in the right direction. So I thought overall, you know, Mia delivered as she always does with a very packed itinerary with the right people and the right materials. So it was all very well planned and prepared. So I think very successful. The frustrating part is Congress has not approved a budget. We're, you know, more than 3 weeks into the fiscal year now, and they don't anticipate approving a budget before the end of the current. So we're under a continuing resolution right now, and the sense that I got from everybody we talked to was they anticipate another one when this one expires November 20th, that we won't have a budget then either. We'll have another continuing resolution, and that hopefully we have a federal budget by the end of this calendar year is what I think that's what we're hoping for, which is.
But we heard a lot about a one-year continuing resolution.
There's talk of a one-year continuing resolution, which would be really frustrating. I think that hasn't happened, I think Mia said, since 2011. So hopefully they can get it worked out. It doesn't, even if that does happen though, it doesn't mean, you know, the Army Corps would still have to put forward a work plan. We would still be advocating for our project to be included in that work plan. So it doesn't mean we're out of luck entirely. It just makes it harder for that process to move forward. It makes it really hard for the agency staff, for the Army Corps staff, with no direction from Congress and a fixed funding level from last year to prepare a work plan. So it puts a lot of pressure on them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we would be excluded from it. What it does mean for us right now is that the clock's ticking. We need to, if we get this funding, we need to get this project in the ground as quickly as possible. And so the longer we're operating under continuing resolutions and until the Army Corps puts forward its work plan, we're in a bit of a holding pattern, and it just shortens the time frame that we have to build this project. So the goal is to get it built within the fiscal year. So that's the kind of ongoing concern right now. Unfortunately, even with all the pull that Director Davidson and Director Rademan have in DC, we were not able to get a budget approved while we were there. But we'll continue to monitor that situation and keep the board posted. But we're gonna keep pushing it. I think one of the other good things that came out of it, in addition to raising attention for that project, is it really helps us to stay focused on it, helps Mia to stay focused on it, and remind everybody that we've been talking about this project for a long time, but it reminds everybody how high of a priority it is to get it done this year. So overall, I think a very productive trip.
Do you have anything else to report?
I think I do, but if you have a question on this, then
no.
Okay. Board, Rebecca Callan, board.
Welcome. Very happy to have you here.
Yeah. So Rebecca's first day was Monday, and she's hitting the ground running, and Peter's providing her with probably a pretty substantial data dump, along with the rest of the finance staff. We're just really excited to have Rebecca here.
Yeah, great.
Welcome.
We had a chance to have lunch with Michael and Rebecca earlier today, and it's really good to see you again. I used to see her frequently on the campus across town, but anyway, we're really delighted to have you here. Very lucky to have you. So,
back when you were training for this job?
I was training, yeah. I have to say that this is a much more fun job than that other one. But you've got to tell somebody about what you did Sunday at 5:30. Yeah.
I already saw that poor little creature.
Thanks to Russ, I found my first buck on Sunday. So.
That was your first buck?
On Russ's
Yeah.
ranch. That was my first one.
Good for you.
Congratulations.
Where was that?
Russ's ranch.
My backyard.
Beautiful property. I also developed a very strong
going
case
on
of
out there?
ranch envy
Was it
that I've
friendly
been
one?
telling Nancy about.
I had him tied up.
Yeah. I thought it was odd that it had a rope around its neck tied to a tree, but I
Did he
didn't ask
fall,
any
did he fall in
questions.
that salt lick? that he
Yeah.
had out there?
Flushing a fire hydrant. I want to tell you that I saw an aggressive side of our general manager that he's not afraid to work hard, just charging up those hills and stuff. And it was I was really quite delighted that he was a successful hunter.
And you let him shoot first, right?
I wasn't there. He just said, "Do you mind if I go out?" And I said, "Heck no, help yourself." But he stalked him and had the wind blowing in his face, and but unfortunately, he shot a deer with only one antler.
Well, it had two when I pulled the trigger. Didn't quite hit exactly where I was aiming.
Yeah, we'll have that story a little bit. It's either really a good shot or what I'm expecting it.
Well, I've been instructed by Russ to tell people that I just am I don't like to spoil any meat at all, so it was intentional. So that's the story I'm sticking to.
Okay.
And you're
All right.
sticking to that, huh?
If you have concluded, could we start with you, Cindy, about board reports?
Yeah, T-Stand didn't have a meeting this month. They had a field trip to a TCRCD project they did, so I didn't go. But I did fill in for Scott at the camera meeting, and that went really nice. And Bertha was sitting there next to me, pushing me to talk all the time. So,
And Cindy says to me,
Wait a
"You
minute.
always do that to me."
well, because I was there, and this was my only second meeting, and so, I don't know a whole lot going on.
So you were saying you were shy because none of us
I was
here.
shy.
None of us believe that.
And then she throws me under the bus, and it's like, here's all the stuff that you need to talk about. It's like, okay.
So you had
But
to
I'm
be-
glad she does it, because it makes me,
So you had to be encouraged to talk.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So,
so, I know, you find that hard to believe.
I do. How about you,
I know what
Jeff?
I'm talking about, I'm okay. Anyhow, so that was it. No T-stand, I'm just.
The only thing I want to talk about is really, Michael did a good job describing how things went in Washington. It was, it was just April when we were told that there were going to be no new starts in the 219 project, and Mia would not take would not take that to be factual, and
Right.
and got Congress to change that. We also, even our meetings with Feinstein and Harris's staff, those were both fully supportive meetings of our word authorization and the 219. We're expecting to get letters of support for all of these things. The big thing will be getting this through the work plan, and the real threat to us as to whether or not they actually create a budget this year. I think every indication was that, primarily in the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office, his statement that, I will be looking for this project in the work plan, and I will call them if it's not in there. That was certainly gave us an optimistic attitude, and also the fact that the Assistant Secretary, his boss, not being a fan of the deauthorization list. So we're hopeful that those things will stay true. Of course, it's a moving target there, but I just think it was a very positive meeting. It was pretty focused, and it was a good deal. And I thought we were well represented by Michael and Mia and Scott, and so it went good. That's it. And I want to make it very clear to the junior director that there is no changing seats, chairs.
Okay, so with that being said, we do need a new chair. Our last meeting, I switched chairs. He wasn't there.
This is a seniority thing around here.
But he was fumbling with it, and I'm trying not to laugh, because I know I switched on him. But I didn't, I didn't put it back, so we can switch back, but we do need a new chair that's not leather.
We used
Because
to-
you slide forward on this one, and you can't.
Cindy,
This
we
one's
used,
perfect.
we used to have a chair up here that as long as, if you, as you sat in it over an hour or so, it would slowly go down. And you have to keep grabbing the handle and pushing it back up. And that made its way around the dais.
And I just kept watching you moving around and things, oh, I still have his chair.
It's like what we used to do to Don Dean, just when we were mad at him, we put him in the little chair.
You weren't here, so I just thought I would try it, and it made a difference, so.
You wouldn't want to put me in a little chair, you wouldn't see me. Director Adam.
Yeah, to continue on with our Washington DC visit, it was at the Assistant Secretary of the Army, which is at the Pentagon, that we really got some great news, and I think both Michael and Jeff have both commented on it, the deauthorization list, as well as he's gonna ask why our project isn't in front of him. And from what I understand, it goes from the district office in Sacramento to a division office, and then eventually it finds its way, this work plan, up through the Army Corps of Engineers, up to Washington DC, and then eventually to the Pentagon, to the office of the Assistant Secretary. I learned a whole lot on this visit, and we do have our congressman, both our Congressman McClintock as well as Congressman Garamendi were in favor of this, are going to write letters of support to the Army Corps, as well as Feinstein and Harris's office. It is a 1.1 million project for tertiary project in Copper Cove, and it must be done within 1 year. Those are the requirements, and it sounded like at the end of the day we have a fairly good chance of getting this. There's a $70 million pot that the Army gives out in this fiscal year, and we're asking for 1.1 of it. I was very encouraged when we left, and I think we're going to continue. Mia and Michael and Jeff all did a fantastic job. Mia has so much pull in this city. I'm so impressed with how everyone we meet, she knows. She's been in contact with them. These meetings go flawlessly. She's amazing, and I don't know when it comes time to renew her contract. These is a no-brainer. It should be in a consent agenda going forward. She is an amazing person. I did get back and found out there was an opening on the JPIA or Aqua JPIA Property Committee, and I've been a property adjuster for 37 years. And I had talked to Andy Sells last couple, he's the CEO of JPIA, and spoke with him about getting on that committee. I did notice there was a vacancy, sent him an email on Monday, and I was offered the position on Tuesday. So I'm now on the JPIA property committee.
Congratulations, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Does that come with a discount for the district?
Yeah, we get bigger checks.
Nice.
Are gonna be bigger now.
Wait.
Yeah, not necessarily in the monetary column, but it's a bigger piece of cardboard, I think.
That's great.
We'll make sure we get a big piece of cardboard.
I
Yeah,
thought
thank
you were going to enjoy your retirement.
By doing things like this, supporting our district here.
Okay, good
That's how
for
I'm
you.
enjoying it. That's all I got.
That's perfect.
Okay, I don't have anything from Washington, but I do have local. And one of my questions is, we had talked about a retreat, and I didn't know the status of that.
It was fantastic. We had it last weekend.
It was at Russ's Ranch.
It was at Russ's Ranch. Yeah. Sorry you didn't get the invite. I don't know the status of it either, other than I know that I still owe you the update, the revised version of the work plan, and then I think we'll go from there.
Oh, okay, so it's in your court now.
Yes,
Still.
I think so.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay, just a little smaller status about White Pines. They want to come up with another beach. So I have a picture and I have a proposal. And if you remember, White Pines Committee leases from the county, and then the county leases from CCWD. Then we had to do it for a state grant. The state wanted somebody more substantial than CCWD, so that's why we brought in the county. So I'll give this to,
So the beach is possible, or more possible because of the weed eradication that took place?
right, they want to expand it, it's down towards Hazel Fisher School, so you can take that one. I was looking, and do we ever do anything with CUPCA, CUPCCAA? We have a, in our publication of whatever it was, Aqua JPIA, we talked about the California Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act and how it benefits public works projects implemented by special districts. So we might, if we're looking for money, this sounds like a good one to me.
It's a great acronym. I'm intrigued. We'll take a look.
Yeah, say that.
Yeah.
Okay. And
It's a brazier manufacturer.
as I say, White Pines is going strong, and I will be attending the meeting for, who's having a meeting next Tuesday?
The Republican Party?
It's tomorrow, that's Friday night, Someone's doing something next Tuesday.
Well, you'll be there, and that's what's important.
What city is it in? Sounds like.
Just make sure you show up at the right place.
Well, the Highway 4 meeting is gonna be the 7th, I didn't mention that. Our Highway 4
Right.
meeting, Thursday the 7th, not Tuesday.
And so I won't have to go home this time because Russ won't be there.
Or if all three of you do show up, then we'll send somebody else on.
Okay, all right.
No, I lost the arm wrestling match already, so. Does
That's
that
it.
conclude your report?
Thank you for that reminder, though, so that's November 7th.
Yes, yeah, it's still a couple weeks out, but
We didn't talk about that meet and greet for Senator Borges, so.
Is McClintock not coming to that? I thought it was both.
He'll be at the Lincoln dinner, but to my knowledge, I don't think he'll be here.
Oh.
Okay, I don't have anything to report on the official business, but I did want to make you aware that the gentleman who owned the construction company that I worked for in Mogadishu, Somalia, was visiting me this past week, and I took him down for a tour of the Copperopolis facilities and brought him here to introduce him around. You were headed in the wrong way down the hallway when I got here. I wish I had had a chance to introduce him. He's quite a remarkable guy. He of course is very involved in all things political in Mogadishu, and was particularly interested in water treatment and wastewater treatment as it relates to Somalia, Mogadishu in particular. Interestingly, his business has grown since I was over there. He has 700 employees now. So he's got his finger in a lot of stuff. So anyway, I guess that concludes our...
Russ, I have
yes?
one thing to say. At
Go
the
ahead.
November 13th meeting, I will not be here. I'll be at a CSDA conference.
Okay.
I mentioned it a
Yeah.
couple meetings ago.
Yeah,
I'm
I-
just looking at my calendar, so it's,
That I've got it on.
yeah.
So then the next one for you will be December.
Oh, actually, yeah, I won't have it. What about a finance meeting? I'll be around for that if you have one.
We should have a finance
Okay,
committee.
I'll be
Right.
available for that. That would be the
Yeah.
19th, so.
So we'll check with you and make sure, because even if we have to move the finance committee meeting, we'll make sure you're there for that one.
Okay, well, the 19th, I'm good. I have it on the schedule.
Okay.
So that's the regular meeting, 9 a.m.
Okay. We're not going to have a meeting on the 25th then of December, right?
We're not going to be
That's,
here?
I'll be here if you would like me to.
Okay.
I think we just canceled it.
Yes, we did.
Okay.
All right. I think that's about it. So our next board meetings will be November 13th, but we will not have a November 27th meeting. So that has been canceled due to actions today.
Okay, that's at 9 o'clock in the morning.
That's right.
9 o'clock, that's what it says.
Bertha time.
The Bertha time.
I'm open to a motion to reconsider that decision.
Well, you'd have to give Bertha a ride home then.
Okay, I think this
Might be a
meeting,
better option.
The Bertha rule.
yeah, this meeting is adjourned.
Well run, Russ, that was.
Oh, it was smooth, yeah, fantastic.